In the hopes of transforming the current internet industry, SpaceX's Starlink satellites are being welcomed by countries all over the world. Knowing this, SpaceX is constantly developing and upgrading its Starlink technology in order to meet the needs of its customers, and on Monday, September 13, 2021, SpaceX launched its first batch of Starlinks equipped with lasers for the first time. The use of these SpaceX lasers is expected to improve the efficiency with which the satellite network relays broadband signals around the world. Isn't it exciting to have something to look forward to? Hello, my name is Alex, and welcome to another amazing video. In today's episode, let's take a look at some of the most notable characteristics of this new generation of Starlink satellites. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification features to ensure that you do not miss any of SpaceX's latest news. Now, let's not waste any more time and get right into it. If you are new to our channel, please accept our warm welcome. Starting with an overview of the recent launch of this new generation of satellites, let us consider how this occurs. Using one of its Falcon 9 rockets, which stands 229 feet tall or 70 meters in height, SpaceX launched a batch of operational Starlink satellites from its California launch facilities on Wednesday. The company SpaceX is launching its own satellites almost weekly, for the first time in more than 2 months, breaking the regular rhythm that had been established earlier this year, according to the company. About 9 minutes after liftoff, the first stage made a smooth propulsive landing on one of SpaceX's rocket landing platforms named, of course, I Still Love You, which is located a few hundred miles downrange in the Pacific Ocean. This was the company's first successful launch. The booster, which flew to space and back on Monday night, was designated B-1049 and was making its 10th trip to and from space. SpaceX has tied a record for the number of flown rockets in its inventory. When the drone ship arrives at Long Beach, California, it will transport the rocket back to the port for refurbishment and assignment to another mission. Approximately 15 minutes into the mission, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 successfully delivered the stack of 51 flat-panel satellites into an orbit that was on target. The rocket was designed to place the Starlink satellites in an elongated orbit with an apogee or high point of 213 miles, 343 kilometers, which was the intended destination. In order to reach an operational circular orbit, at an altitude of 354 miles, 570 kilometers. The satellites being built by SpaceX, on an assembly line, in Redmond, Washington, will deploy solar panels and activate Krypton-fueled plasma thrusters. SpaceX completed the fleet's first orbital shell after a series of dedicated launches from Florida that took place over a 2-year period between May of 2019 and May of this year, completing the first orbital shell of the fleet. The Starlink satellites that have been launched so far extend the network's reach to high latitudes, but they do not provide complete coverage of the globe. As Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president and chief operating officer, recently stated, "We've completed the first element of our network, which essentially gets us to or from latitudes of plus or minus 50 degrees, plus or minus 53 degrees, and plus or minus 55 degrees." The Starlink program's next phase, which will begin with Monday's launch, will broaden its reach to include the polar regions of the world. "We had hoped to be able to do so a little bit sooner, but we're currently working on our laser communication terminals," Shotwell explained. Having rushed to complete the development of new inter-satellite laser terminals to be installed on all future Starlink satellites since May, the question now is whether this new version of Starlink, which has prompted SpaceX to invest so much time and money in research, is actually more effective. The use of these SpaceX lasers is expected to improve the efficiency with which the satellite network relays broadband signals around the world. Ground stations are expensive, and their placement on the planet is limited by geographical and political constraints. They are also difficult to build. By using laser links, the Starlink satellites will be able to transmit internet traffic from spacecraft to spacecraft around the world without the need for the signals to be relayed through a ground station that is connected to a terrestrial network. A SpaceX engineer said the new Starlink satellites represent a significant advancement in technology. Most satellites, he explained, do not communicate with one another directly, but rather use radio frequency communications with a ground station to relay communications between satellites, rather than directly. The surprising satellites that will be launched today will be testing fully operational optical inter-satellite links, also known as space lasers, that will allow direct communications between the satellites without the need for ground stations to act as an intermediary between them. The laser links may also be able to reduce the latency of the network, which is the amount of time it takes for a signal to travel between destinations. The satellite's ability to see almost all the way to the poles will be enhanced by their launch into a polar orbit, according to Joe. This will allow them to provide near-global coverage. Because of this, Starlink will be able to expand its network of satellites to include Alaska, Scandinavia, and other polar regions. You may be aware that the launch on Monday night brings the total number of Starlink spacecraft launched by SpaceX to 1,791 satellites, including failed and decommissioned spacecraft, bringing the total number of satellites in orbit to the largest fleet ever launched. Astronomer and respected tracker of spaceflight activity, Jonathan McDowell, reports that SpaceX currently has 1,420 operational Starlink satellites, with more than 100 additional craft in the process of being deployed into their operational positions in orbit. This is a long way from SpaceX's goal of putting 42,000 Starlinks into orbit, but it is not out of reach for them in the coming years and decades. Will there be any roadblocks in the way of the new laser satellite? Unfortunately, the laser-equipped satellites did not address the ever-present controversy that Starlink's is excessively bright, which has been a source of concern for many years. They have the potential to interfere with the professional astronomical observations that have led us to our current understanding of the cosmos, which is a concern. Despite the fact that SpaceX has made efforts to mitigate the problem, the satellite's brightness has the potential to interfere with observations of the night sky. There is little hope for a future in which people can look up and see the sky crawling with satellite lights if things continue in this direction. Rival companies, such as Amazon, have expressed concern about SpaceX's plan for a second-generation Starlink system, which has been updated recently. Kuiper Systems, a subsidiary of Amazon that specializes in satellite broadband, claims that SpaceX violated FCC rules by proposing two different configurations for the nearly 30,000 satellites that make up its Gen 2 system. Each of these constellations places these satellites in a different orbit, with a different set of orbital parameters. It is our opinion that SpaceX's novel approach of applying for two mutually exclusive configurations is in conflict with both the Commission's rules and public policy, and that the Commission should dismiss this amendment. In response to Amazon's filing, Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX, tweeted, "Turns out Bezos retired in order to pursue a full-time job filing lawsuits against SpaceX." Musk was referring to Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, who had recently announced his retirement. Although the FCC proceeding is not a lawsuit. Bezos' Blue Origin recently filed a lawsuit against NASA over a lunar lander contract that was awarded to SpaceX, when Amazon has received approval from the United States to launch 3,236 low Earth orbit satellites, but the company will not be able to launch any satellites until 2023. This is considered competition. To conclude today's episode, please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell to ensure that you don't miss any future episodes of SpaceX Fans. Once again, thank you very much, and please remember to leave a comment down below if you have any suggestions.